Hello, everybody. Let's see if we can get the show on the road. Super awesome last lightning talk. I almost feel like I want to invite him back up here and share some more about it, but it has a special place in my heart because I kind of got started in the Python community actually doing humanitarian open source. And actually, I think this one is. All right. How's everybody been at PyCon India? I've had a blast. Of the first-time people who were here, did you have a good time? That sounded kind of weak. Did you have a good time? Very cool. Do me a favor. Give a huge round of applause to all the volunteers, sponsors, and organizers, speakers, and other attendees that were here. This is a huge undertaking. 1,600 people, 10th year in India. Pretty cool. And the level of talent here is amazing. And so I've been really, really pleased to be here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the future of Python. And actually, the future of Python starts maybe right now. And it starts with you. You're here today. You're going to go out and make an impact in the future. And your impact that you make will not all be the same, but each one will be important. So as we look at Python and we look at this conference, we started with Armin, who I have to say, I'm kind of a fangirl of Armin. Flask was one of the first things I learned. Click, Lecter, Jinja, just amazing stuff. And it was a very sad day in my life when, understandably, Armin needed a break from our community. And I think what's great is he found another amazing community in Rust. Truth be told, I had a commit in Rust before I ever had a commit in Python. So it was several years ago. And it's a great language, but it's an even better community. And they're doing good things, just like we are in the Python community. And I really hope that whatever we do going forward, Armin is part of it, because he has built so many things that we all rely on. No pressure, Armin. Just something to think about. Okay, so Python started back in Guido had a Christmas vacation type thing, bored, decided to write some code in 1989. It's come a long way since then. And for those of you who are skeptical that we will ever fully get from Python 2 to Python 3, I think we can. And I think where we were 3 years ago, we certainly weren't 349 of the 360 top packages were not Python 3 ready. They are now, and I think that's a huge testament to the sharing of knowledge and the people that were the early people to kind of go from 2 to 3. Some of our folks in the science community pushed really hard for 3 for a number of reasons, and we're glad they did. PyPy.org hosts so many wonderful, rich libraries. I had the opportunity to speak with a young man last night who had contributed to Warehouse, which is the new PyPy framework, and had fabulous things to say about the people he worked with. So learn how to do packaging so that you too can have your project used by millions of people just like Armin. Okay, So, as we're looking at things, the number 41, that is actually the number of years that I have written software code. And they didn't have electricity back then. No. And so it's a long time. And these are the languages that I have actually written code in. And I will say that Python is my favorite, but it's a very close tie with C. And one of the things that I think was great that Python let us do is develop something called Jupyter Notebooks. Anybody use a Jupyter Notebook? Cool. Those of you that haven't tried Jupyter Notebooks, I hope you will. They're great to teach with. There are now over 2 million notebooks out in the wild. Now, if I look at the past, I got involved with Jupyter in 2013. Actually, it wasn't even Jupyter then. It was IPython and IPython notebooks. And the reason that I got involved with it is I started teaching workshops in San Diego. And it was too hard to have every person install Python at that time because you had Windows, you had Linux, you had Mac. Pip was nowhere near as good as it is now. And it was painful. And here you want to share the excitement of Python, and you hit this roadblock for installation. Now, the notebooks were actually a lot easier to install because we had Anaconda, and we could just download a binary, install it. And remember that, because it's going to come back later. And so we reduced the burden, and we were actually able to tell people, hey, you can use Python. You can get a lot of stuff done. So as we look at the past, we learned some lessons. One of those lessons is change is a constant. There's always going to be change in languages, in problems, in capabilities. When I started programming, there was no internet. There was no web browser. I can remember my engineering group, bless their hearts, porting to every flavor of Unix, Windows NT, and DOS. I'm really glad we don't have to do that now. Now, in case you haven't noticed, many software developers have opinions. In fact, many have very strong opinions, which is good and bad. Come on, come back. Okay, good. And one of the things with opinions is your opinion might not be the same as mine, might not be the same as Mark's, or Kushal's, or Guido's, and that causes some problems. The code is easy. People are harder. And to create great code, you need to be able to communicate within and among each other. It is absolutely critical. Otherwise, you're going to have a project of one, and the one user will be you and no one else. So this team, back in 2014, actually all of us weren't there in 2014, this is the Jupyter core team. Huge, thousands of us. Actually, there is thousands of us when we look at the community itself. But on a day-to-day basis, we're not that big, but we got a lot of stuff done. If you had asked me in 2013 or 2014, would Jupyter have over 2 million notebooks today? Would Jupyter Hub be around and deployed in many different places, from supercomputer centers to things like Google Colab or Azure Notebooks? I would have been like, no, there's no way to predict that. And in my wildest dreams, I would have never imagined that Jupyter would have been honored with the Software System Award from the ACM. When we found that out, we actually were reading like who had gotten it before, and it was things like Unix, the internet, web browsers, and we're like, whoa, maybe we really did create something that people find value in. And the reason I bring this up is Python is the unsung hero of what had made Jupyter successful. We were built on Python. We had a great community with which to spread the word of how the notebooks could help people. And Python has a really strong ethos of education. Education and learning has been important to Python for a long time. So, as we look towards the future, we have a choice that we can make. We could look at the glass as half empty or having a hole in the bottom, or we could look at it as half full and that there's potential. It's not going to be perfect, but there's the potential for us to go out and continue to do great things locally and on a global scope. One of the things that makes it possible to do that is very early on, Guido felt that programming languages were about communicating ideas and solving problems. And the language was actually more important to people than machines. Because machines will do whatever you ask them to do, and they won't question it, unless there's some big hardware issue. While as people, if they can't understand or read code, it's not very useful to them. So he really looked at designing a language that was readable and easy to use. So Python is a language for everyone. We see that in the breadth of uses with Python, whether it's web, education, science, data science, systems, DevOps, what am I forgetting? Embedded, and web. The most important, I thought this was a cool quote that Guido had about a lesson. One of the most important lessons he learned was about sharing. And sharing knowledge is something that we can all do. And I think it's something that has separated the Python community, at least to me, from many other technical communities, is that very strong desire to share good projects, your use cases, and the information. So we look at the future, and where are we with the future of Python? Armin did a great job of outlining many, many different things to look at, and I'm going to highlight a few and hopefully dispel some of the concerns that he had, because many of them were concerns that I had too. So I'm going to focus on three things: the Python core language, the Pythonistas, of which we are all, and the possibilities for the future. So the Python core language has had its challenges over time. It has been traditionally a very male-dominated language, although many of the people, Guido included, have been very helpful and respectful towards women and others. But you're still a language that didn't have, until this year, 4 women core developers. And if you think about that, if you're designing something that doesn't work for all the people that use it, you're missing out. So Guido has stepped down. in part because of how crummy people can be on mailing lists. And I ask you, do not be one of the crummy people. It just doesn't help anyone. CPython now does no longer have the benevolent dictator for life. And the question is, well, what are we going to have? And how are we going to get to it? And will Python go away? I don't think Python will go away. I think we will come up with some sort of governance model. And I think it will be better than what we had before. I'm sharing with you where you can follow the ideas and comment on how you think Python should evolve when it comes to contributions and governance. There are these things called PEPs. A lot of us know PEP 8 with the formatting and stuff. Well, now we have a series of PEP 8000s that talk about how we're going to choose a new governance structure. Several of us went out and looked at various communities, Jupyter, Rust, OpenStack, and others, to see how they are doing governance and what might work well for us or what might not fit for us. And then there's several different people who have different views of what the governance model should be. Now, how do we get from 5 or 6 PEPs of different governance models to an actual real way to govern? Now this, I don't expect you to see any of the details, but I'm sharing it with you because I'm going to post it later. This is what I shared with the core team that was at the sprints a couple weeks ago. One of the things that I have is experience in nonprofits and running volunteer organizations. And Armin hit on many of the key points at the start of the conference. A mission. We need to have a common mission. We need to be able to communicate to people what the language is for, what their guiding principles are, and what use cases we're targeting. It's critical. Then when we look at organization, we recognize, or we need to recognize, that we have the Python Software Foundation, and they take care of much of the day-to-day stuff, outreach to the community, grants, things like that. So the Python core team is really predominantly in charge of the features that go into the language itself and maintaining the actual technical bits about the language. Now, what the team does need to do, and perhaps has not been as good as they could have been in the past, is communicating what they're doing to the greater world of Pythonistas. And I think that needs to be something that has to change in order for us to carry out the mission. And we want Python to grow. We want Python to be useful. We want it to be used in industry, science, data science. So as we look at that, what the core team needs to do is step up the game on the language stewardship. And by that I mean better workflow processes for getting things merged quicker and not letting things languish. Yes, everybody is volunteers, but so are the contributors, for the most part, are also volunteers. And if I'm a contributor and I can't get somebody to respond to a PR that I have filed in Python, why wouldn't I go to Jupyter or requests or the Rust community or any of the number of JavaScript projects out there? Why wouldn't I contribute to those? So we need to make it a two-way street. It can't just be the core developers are up here and the contributors are down here. What we need is better cadence in how we treat pull requests and issues. And that may mean different tooling. We moved to GitHub. I think that was a good move. I think that has improved things quite a bit. So the language stewardship is really there to decide what the outcomes of PEP should be and really to get the day-to-day stuff done. And the day-to-day stuff, you're going to have ongoing things, just like you do in your own projects. Maintenance, outreach, making sure that releases as they come out, you have release notes, and that people can still install your stuff. You have documentation that folks can use. And on the flip side, there's going to be new features and new projects. And it's there that we have the greatest opportunity, because those are projects that we haven't done yet. And they might not belong in the standard language. It might be something that's better done in a third-party package. But it's things we need to look at. And then finally, people. How we treat people within the core project and outside of the core project really matters. The PSF principles of courtesy, openness, respect haven't always been followed within that core team. And learning how to trust other people, excuse me, that they also have talents and opinions is really important. So Python 2.7 is going to retire in a year, a little over a year. And for those of you that are interested in how that's going, there's a clock, there's a statement. As I talked about before, there's a lot of packages that are already ready for Python 3. One of the big things you can do if you're trying to move a legacy code base that's on 2 to 3 is make sure you have really good tests. And then some folks have written some good processes and tips, and you can find them through those websites as to how you actually can get practically from 2 to 3. All right, so I talked about the rich ecosystem of libraries, and I think that is we talked about shiny baubles at the PyLadies women's lunch, and I think the rich ecosystem of libraries is really Python's greatest strength, more so than even the language itself. The ability to use these libraries to get things done is it's huge. I mean, think of any type of thing you want to do in the world, from music to astronomy, which had some really cool keynotes lightning talks yesterday. These libraries are the golden treasure of Python. And so if we look at this bowl of spices, which those of you who have done machine learning and scikit image might recognize it, think of the core language at the middle and all the other packages outside of it. And you get that rich ecosystem by having it all. So let's look at Pythonistas for a second. What does the future hold for us? The future of Python must include diversity of ideas. It's absolutely critical. And the diversity of ideas includes people and different technologies. I've heard a lot of questions here from different people this week. How do I learn? To which project should I contribute? How can I become a speaker? How do we get more people involved in our meetup groups? How do I become a Python core developer? Why do I want to become a Python core developer? Remember, there's lots of other projects that you could also contribute to and might be a better fit. So if we're inclusive, we make an impact. If we are siloed, we only serve a small subset of people. So if we're looking at a movie, we could say Pythonistas, the sequel. The past is the past. We can't change what has happened in the past, but we can change every day what the future will hold. So, much like with our code and our testing and our projects, let's come up with some sensible defaults. And those sensible defaults, in my opinion, are first and foremost respect. Respect other people's time. When you disagree, make that disagreement graceful. Don't make it about the person, make it about the content. And respect that your idea might not actually be the best. It might, but then again, it might not. Another key thing is listening. And by that, it's not just like hearing words that come out of somebody's mouth. That's not really listening. That's hearing. Listen to understand what somebody perhaps with a different viewpoint than you, what they're trying to say. You don't necessarily have to agree, but consider they may have valid points to make. And by valuing the ideas of others and agreeing to disagree on maybe technical merits, but not on personalities, is really important. One of the things I think we do well, and I would really hope that we would continue doing, is sharing. We do a great job of sharing the knowledge that we have and our experiences. When it comes to the language itself, we need to share in the risks and the rewards as things change. It can't be, oh, you tried this, you failed, you're horrible. Or, yay, you made the whole thing, it was all you. It's never just one person. It's always a team now. Trust. We need to trust each other. We need to trust other people's intentions. And we need to rein in negativity, particularly on mailing lists and communications channels, because negativity shuts down creativity. It makes people want to leave a project. Silencing productive discussion and gatekeeping and trying to keep people out because they might be different than you causes a toxic workflow. And it's a toxic workflow that would hinder us from really reaching our full potential. Humility is also very important. We know that each of us has a talent in a particular area, but how you use that talent is key. Are you going to be the person that lords it over like the minesweeper person in the office from the lightning talk before? Or are you going to be the person that recognizes your talents, is confident in your talents, and then shares your talents and your knowledge with others? Again, being humble. We all fail. In fact, if you don't fail, you're probably not working very hard. We all have failures. Hopefully they're small. Sometimes they're big. Like, I wouldn't want to be the person that all of a sudden brought Google's network down. That would be kind of scary. But by being humble, you are able to innovate. You're able to create amazing things like we did with Jupyter. So, possibilities. Possibilities are endless. I have no idea what will happen in the future. I don't have a crystal ball. WebAssembly, JavaScript, things like that allow us to have a better story in mobile, in gaming, and in distribution, as Armin talked about yesterday. I think is critical. So much of what we do is on a mobile or a tablet or for pleasure. Gaming is the gateway for many of us to get into programming. Even though I learned programming 41 years ago, I did it creating games. Very different games than you create now. It was actually, I ported Atari's Breakout to an Apple, and it took a long time, and you could probably do it in many, many less lines of code now. Interactivity. Interactivity, the type of interactivity that JavaScript and things that let you manipulate items in the DOM, things like React, are hugely important. They engage people in education, research, exploration. For those of you that want to see something really cool that can be done in science, check out IPyVolume. It's a 3D visualization library. You can see animation. It has AR capabilities, and it's really a cool project. And their documentation, which is Sphinx documentation, lets you interact with those same visualizations and widgets and sliders and animations. And that ability to interact with content drives education. It helps us learn faster. It helps us explore our data. Productivity. We don't want to lose the productivity we have with Python now. I think that's one of the things that many people find great about it. It's like, I can get my job done. I could be in any of those fields, but I can get my job done. So, the future has a lot to do with empowering people technically as well as socially. I would love to see the talent that is in this room give talks, write blog posts, make cool new packages, share them with others, because you have the power to change the world. We saw that. We had the power to change people's lives by creating programs so that people could get out of a flood and save their lives. And that's empowering. So, Python Core, Pythonistas Possibilities. These are all part of our future. Guido had said at some point, a programming language created by a community fosters happiness in its users around the world. Sometimes we lose sight of that, but that should be what we strive towards. And in closing, the future of Python is you. Thank you.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
So I was speaking to Travis a couple of days back, and we spoke about...
Travis Oliphant? Travis, who was here and spoke this morning?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
So we spoke like the way he started off was a lot of distributed packages exist which do similar stuff, but not everything together. So people are motivated to compile one package which does all of these things. But today you see that this problem has increased. A lot of developers are individually developing stuff, but they're not advertising it. So the point of advertising a software package is taking more precedence because the more audience it reaches, the better popularity it gains, right? So there are a lot of good packages which are like obscure, which people do not know about. And I want to know, what is your vision about consolidating software that a lot of individual contributors write? What would be a right platform for it? Do you think there should be some PSF blog or community portal where people, can get to collaborate on these things, a collaboration portal?
I guess I'm not quite sure what the question is. Are you asking me, there's a lot of smaller projects out there.
Correct.
How do we get them exposure and people to understand and hear about them?
Yes.
Okay. So first and foremost, PyPy now lets you put a lot more metadata into your packages, and they have a great tutorial that shows you how. That metadata will get displayed to anybody who's on that site. So that's one thing. Second thing, write good documentation. Doesn't have to be long documentation, but it has to get the person, A, to be able to install your package, and B, give them a real-world example of how they would use it. Requests did a good job in their documentation with that. And then there are a lot of organizations out there that have weekly messages or blogs, and they kind of aggregate the content of what they see out there. Send messages to them saying, hey, I've got this cool project. Would you like to pass the news along? Or if you're part of a user group, present it at a user group. You know, there's not like a one-size-fits-all in how you get your word out, but the best way to get your word out is to start attracting users. Does that answer the question? Great.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Carol. Thank you. It was very inspiring. I don't have a question, actually. I just wanted to say thank you. And thanks a lot, whatever you are doing for the community. And please do come back.
Thank you. I've had a delightful time and have felt very welcomed here all week.
Hello.
So, and I'm looking forward to the sprints the next couple days. Yep.
Hi, Willing. So I have a question. So dealing with criticism and, people have opinions. It's like something we all need to learn. So what is your take on this? I mean, you have any experience where you have faced some really bad criticism while building an awesome software?
Criticism, it's there. Most criticism is constructive. And so when somebody criticizes stuff that I've done, I try and first not react with the, oh my gosh, you're an idiot, why did you say that, blah, 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 I'm always right. That gets you nowhere. Take some time and absorb what the criticism is, and then it's reasonable to go back and ask a question like, I understand why you might feel this way, but I'm not clear exactly what motivated you to feel this way. Is there something we can change? Is there a way to compromise? The Harvard Negotiation Project has some really good blog posts and books about how to deal with difficult conversations. And another way to nicely give people criticism is to use the great tooling that we have. Use Travis and your tests to help guide people to what you want your code to do. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.